Joining me now is Jay Martin. He is the president and CEO of Cambridge House International. Good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you, Mark.
Yeah, we did this a year ago. We stood right here. You've pulled it off again. Looks like another great event. So just remind everybody who may not know that much about VRIC, what's the overarching mission of this conference?
If there's an overarching mission, it's to educate people on how to invest in the commodity sector. So I'm a commodity investor. I love studying the commodity industry because if you understand the nuances in the supply and demand of the key materials that the world needs, it just tells you a lot about why the world functions the way it does and why power is distributed to places that it is. Typically, it's because they control the key commodities that the rest of the world wants. And so thinking through this industry that way almost applies like a Game of Thrones mentality to it. You know, you get to look for early stage, mid stage investment opportunities through the lens of understanding world order and geopolitics. And I love that story. It's super fun.
China's dominance of rare earths is a great example of that in the EV supply chain, for sure. So I'm sure every VRIC is different, has a different dynamic, different vibe, different feel. We're hearing halfway through from people that positive this year, feels good. Uranium companies are rock stars. The presentations are packed. People spilling out the door, their booths are packed. So how would you define so far halfway through what the sense is, what the vibe is?
Yeah, there's like three things at play. So uranium's a big winner right now. A lot of people are very excited about that. I mean, we were just chatting the uranium panel on the main stage. People were like climbing over the walls trying to get in. It's very busy, and that's because uranium investors have had to be very patient for the last 10 years, right? And so now they're getting some returns. It's an exciting time for that market. But the rest of the industry, you know, commodities in general, I would say, have been relatively starved of capital for about 10 to 12 years. As a consequence, we are undersupplied in pretty much everything that we need. And commodities are the ingredients, right, that we build our future worlds with. So without that, we can't do anything. And I'm bullish, human ingenuity and progress. Like, we're going to keep building stuff, so we're going to keep needing stuff, but the supply of everything's been underfunded, and as a consequence, there's huge demand for these metals right now, and that's a massive opportunity for investors, especially on the heels of, you know, if we're going through some kind of a change in the world order, this puts a lot of scarcity, right? This puts a lot of vulnerability in the supply chains of key materials that countries used to have access to, increasing the value.
Junior explorers have been starved of capital in a general sense for a few years now. Are you getting any feeling that sentiment is changing a little bit? Money may start to flow in. I mean, it's got to be at low ebb now. It's got to turn at some point, right?
Yeah, I mean, we all look at the indicators that we have that we're closest to. And minus people, right? I run a conference and a podcast, and so I'm always having conversations with capital allocators and investors, and so that's what I follow. And like, what I would say here is that there's far more people here than I would have anticipated had you asked me 6 months ago what the attendance is going to be like. So people are turning their attention to this sector. The evidence is that they're voting with their feet, right? We're about 30% better attended this conference than last year. And so it's an important indicator that I watch, because more people at this show is more capital to this industry. That's what moves share prices, when there's more buyers than sellers.
Okay, good stuff. And just lastly, if somebody were coming to VRIC for the first time, be it an issuer or a retail investor or investment banker, after the experience, whether one day or two, what do you want them to, as the head of the whole thing, what do you want them to walk away with?
It's not exciting, but what I want them to walk away with is an understanding of the importance of patience and time horizon, because over the last few years, there's been a surge of new investors entering the market, not the commodities market, but the broad market. And a lot of these individuals, they think they're investors, but they act like traders, right? They're not necessarily buying ownership in companies and investing, they're just trading share prices. And that's a tough game to win. That's a tough game to find your competitive advantage. And it's not really a strategy for most folks. Every piece of content we've hosted today thus far, we focused on time horizon and what it means to be an investor, and therefore subsequently an owner of those companies. And that, you know, all the billionaires on our stage yesterday and today, that's how they made their money, is by placing bets, buying things when they were cheap, and then waiting and then selling those things when they become expensive. And that's a patient game, but it's also the one that works generation after generation.
Right, having the long-term view, and also realizing the commodities reward you infrequently, as Rick Rule says, but when they do, they really reward you, right?
Yeah, and if you're clear on your time horizon, I mean, here's what happens, right? If you're investing for 2030, for example, right, then what happens in 2025 shouldn't impact your conviction that much. You place your bet, you like copper right now because you think we're moving towards more renewable energy. You need copper to build anything, but if you want to electrify those things, you need much, much more. And the copper deficit spread from 2026 forward gets really exciting from a demand standpoint, right? But in between now and then, there's going to be fluctuations in that price because the macro theme may say, I'm bullish copper 5-10 years. But in the middle there, you're going to have traders get involved. And they're going to overbuy, and they're going to oversell, and they're going to overbuy and oversell. And so on that curve up, you're going to see massive fluctuation and volatility. And if you're not clear on your time horizon, you get shaken out by that volatility because you'll think you're wrong, right? But if you just sit back and revisit your long-term thesis and say, has that changed? And if it hasn't, then you can sit back and be patient and have the tenacity to hold on.
All right, sound advice, Jay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Okay, good stuff. Jay Martin, President, CEO at Cambridge House International.